Hey folks, Phil Gallagher of ThrabenU here for another Death and Taxes video. So this is a session that I recorded some amount of time ago. I recorded this mid-December before kind of like all the holidays started happening. And I'm just going to kind of keep this video in my pocket for a little while. I'm going to process it and do all the editing and stuff now. And then I'm going to post it a little bit later because I have so many Death and Taxes videos to post right now. So just a couple notes about these in case you haven't watched any of these tutoring videos before. Number one, I'm not pressing the buttons. Someone else is. Number two, because I'm working with someone else, it's much harder to edit out all of the dead time, so I am not going to be doing that for this video. Number three, if you are used to how quickly my videos work, this is not going to move that quickly. So if you're used to like the 0 dead time and stuff, and you just find this is moving too slowly, don't worry about it. Feel free to set it to double speed or something like that and plow through. Otherwise, just kind of one note about this. I had not played with Timeless Dragon a lot in this league, so there are going to be a couple of things that I say that are just wrong about that card. I thought it eternalized as a 5/5. It eternalizes as a 4/4. So a couple of the little strategic things that I say are just a tiny bit off. Anyway, I hope you enjoy. Please consider leaving me a like before we get started. It's one of the easiest ways to support my content for free. All right, let's battle. All right, so as always, what do you think of your opening hand?
This is something I'm inclined to try to keep because I like the chance to draw lands over 2 turns while we're on the draw, even if our vial gets countered or removed.
This is a very good 6-card hand that does not, like, ignoring the Batterskull, which is not going to be a real card this game unless things already start going right. This is a pretty respectable 6-card hand. Keeping it's okay. Mulliganing it is okay.
Okay, I'll take it for a spin.
Yeah, so this is a hand where being on the draw probably pays you off for keeping this the vast majority of the time, because you're pretty likely to hit that second land. And if you do hit the second land, you have 2 reasonable plays.
Yeah. Not really sure. I mean, this is, I'm not sure what this deck is right now. Some sort of Maverick deck or something?
Windswept Heath Savannah into Birds of Paradise also has me thinking Maverick as well.
Okay.
Basic Plains is so strong.
Yeah.
All right. If there was ever a time to just draw that land, it's right here.
Basic Plains on the top. Let's do it. And in that case, I feel like my Stoneforge Mystic just dies. So probably better to play the Thalia.
Would you?
Well,
Would you?
Spirit is better because we got this Sylvan Library, rather.
Yes, let's do that.
Hey.
Denying your opponent those maybe 4-ish cards over the course of a game is pretty big. If they have Swords to Plowshares specifically, like, it is what it is. But trying to stop that from happening is a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, Thalia is going to be one of your weakest cards versus a deck like Maverick anyway.
Okay.
They're going to have a lot of creature spells, and they're going to have a lot of cards like Knight of the Reliquary that are just going to just be larger than it on raw stats.
Yeah.
So we will probably try to board Thalia's out. It's a little harder in these Yorion builds to board out all of the cards that are traditionally seen as weak in things like Maverick and D&T mirrors.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, the good news here is that we just did not just like immediately get wastelanded.
That is good.
Oh, that's an insane draw. Holy crap.
So if Thalia is that bad, Is there any consideration for exiling her then and just flashing in this Stoneforge,
So
viling in the Stoneforge?
the, the question here is kind of like, how long is this game lasting, right? So if this game's lasting a long time, the Thalia is a very bad card. If you care about the next turn cycle specifically, then like being able to play Athalia and then Violin and End of Turn Stoneforge as a surprise is pretty appealing. But I think your gut of wanting to just immediately Solitude away the Knight is totally fine. So there's one more choice you can make this turn. If you know you would like to fetch Umezawa's Jitte with Stoneforge Mystic, you can get and play Jitte immediately, and then you kind of use your mana. Otherwise, you can just kind of hold back and try to end of turn surprise with Stoneforge, and then you can make the choice of whether or not you're going to get Jitte or Cauldra.
When I play against swords, my usual thought is to not get the Cauldra. So I think, yeah, a Jitte is probably where I'd like to be here.
Okay, go ahead. So in talking about our decision tree, the thing that this opens you up to is sorcery speed removal, and this also lets your opponent know to kind of like dig for an answer to one of these cards via a Sylvan library. So if your opponent is playing something like, say, Prismatic Ending, that can be something that like your opponent could cast at sorcery speed that they couldn't at instant speed.
Right, yeah. But if it gets to stay in play, it can be it's the high upside, I suppose.
Oh, absolutely. And this is one of those scenarios where if your opponent puts the emphasis on the Jitte and not the Stoneforge that's on the board, like you have these Flicker Wisps, you can reset it that way. You've got plenty of options here. And honestly, the easiest way for you to win this game is to just hit your opponent with a Flicker Wisp a couple of times.
Yeah, they are at 10. I don't think I was super aware of that.
Yes, they have halved their life total with Sylvan Library. So a very likely scenario of you winning this game is they fetch once, going to 9, you hit them with a Flicker Wisp for 3, and then you hit them with 2 Flicker Wisps for 6, and they're dead. Like that's how quickly this game will potentially end.
Okay. I just realized that like whatever Nico Eris is holding the avatar for our opponent, there's a face on the backside of that spear.
Oh.
Yeah. It's like a different person's face. Super weird. Okay, back to playing Magic Well.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, like there's the scenario. So kind of the next thing we're gonna have to figure. Ooh, yeah, that red might be Prismatic Ending red. Oh, their own Jitte.
Okie dokie. Well, might as well block then, huh?
It's okay to block. Like you get a Dryad Arbor here. The thing that blocking does that's a little awkward is that it leaves them with one leftover Jitte counter, which means that they can kill a Flicker Wisp with it.
Okay. Sideboard revealed.
I don't actually know that it was correct to do the block there. Kind of see how it plays out.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking I didn't think.
Yeah. So just imagine how different this scenario is if you didn't block and then your opponent had to use both Jitte counters to kill the Stoneforge Mystic.
Yep.
Now your opponent, like, does not have a creature with real power in play. And you end up in a slightly better position. We're not in bad shape, but we're not in good shape because of that block. The fact that we can't pressure our opponent's life total and they just have this Sylvan Library for selection is kind of a huge problem here.
Yeah, part of me thinks we're about to be on one land. And like, not looking forward to another night.
There's still a decent number of scenarios where our opponent gets greedy and we can punish them really hard. So, for example, if they go for an equip with a Jitte and then pump the bird using the Jitte counter, we can do some pretty gross things involving our own Flicker Wisp. Let's just equip the Jitte. Just equip the Jitte. Just do it. Please. Oh. That's interesting. I wasn't really expecting that.
Yeah, I was wondering, I was like, is this a Pyroblast red? No, of course.
I thought that plateau was just going to be for like a prismatic ending or something as an additional color. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's a thing. It exists.
I kind of feel like letting them hit me. And if they play it, right? If they play something off that we get like like, I don't know what that would be, like recruiter or something. Not so much now.
So you have to do something about this. So if you Flicker Wisp and blink the Jitte, the counter is just going to kill the Flicker Wisp and Ragavan still connects in. You could pitch cast Solitude and get rid of this Ragavan permanently if that's something that you want to do. It still leaves you with a Flicker Wisp to try to wiggle through the Jitte. But we really wanted our opponent to use the Jitte counter actively.
Yeah.
So I would go ahead and go to blocks, give them priority there, and see if they want to pump the damage, and then you can make a decision about whether or not you want to do anything. All right, looks like they don't.
So I think Solitude Solitude looks better and better.
Okay.
I just hope to draw something to make Flicker Wisp worth something.
Sure. This is not the Solitude we want. Like, we're getting to the turn count where, like, we should theoretically be able to put one of these Solitudes in play. But with the Jitte around, that's just not, like, super reasonable to do immediately.
Yeah.
You're pretty much forced into leaving that at 3 for right now.
Yeah.
Fortunately. There's some scenarios where, like, you use the Vial now, you blink the Jitte, you trade the Jitte counter for Flicker Wisp, you bump it up, but then something like an Exalted creature kind of ruins your day.
So in a few turns, drawing a Urza's Saga, is a reasonable way to get some value. But
you're not taking your opponent off of any land here if they've already wastelanded you. Grabbing their other wasteland is fine if you want to play towards some of your other lands becoming more stable.
Yeah.
Yep. Now you're in a kind of like we wait situation.
Yeah.
So again, the hope is that the opponent goes for an equip on a Bird of Paradise, and like you can get a blowout that way. Because if you get in once, you're absolutely in the driver's seat from here. Sylvan Library is a hell of a drug, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish I had one. Really hoping to draw a Stoneforge Mystic. Not sure. Well, a Cathar Commando wouldn't be a bad draw, I suppose. This isn't awesome. However.
Indeed, it is not awesome. It is just a 7/7 in addition to everything else that's going on here.
Yeah. And I guess we're keeping it here.
All right. That at least allows the Yorion to come to hand. But I think you're probably in a situation where you're going to have to draw a removal spell or just be in for a world of hurt.
Yeah. What kind of lands is Maverick? What kind of stuff do they usually pull off the night? Is it?
Usually there's not too many flashy lands. So sometimes in the 75, you might see something like a Maze of Ith. Tabernacle is rare, but sometimes around. Bojuka Bog, Caracas. Some builds will play a Thespian Stage Dark Depths combo. It's really hard to tell whether or not those are going to be around. I'm guessing that since our opponent has so much red mana, they're not actually going to have too many utility lands. Like
Yeah.
they straight up might just be on like wastelands and maybe some other one like a Gaia's Cradle or something. Okay.
And
That's actually really annoying because that represents a Dryad Arbor every turn for the rest of the game. And Dryad Arbor is a creature that can wield this Jitte. And a potentially tiny mistake on our opponent's end. If they intend on attacking with this knight, they've kind of gone about it in a weird. Okay, they're not. All right, so if they're not going for attacks here, that potentially means that you're just going to get Dark Depths comboed over the course of 2 or 3 turns here.
which means I'm holding this Flicker Wisp.
Yeah, which means we're not ticking up the vial. Basically, life's bad.
Yeah, I do not feel empowered.
Yeah, play your land past the turn, and I think once we see half of the Dark Depths combo, we can probably just concede on it. Oh, wow. Ugh. Well, now I'm just confused. His opponent, like, both did not activate Knight and did not attack with it.
Yeah. Hmm.
Alright, so now you can vial in your Flicker Wisp.
I mean, I guess we're going for here and try to block, but that won't succeed.
I don't even know that you do block. Yeah, so they have the Punishing Fire combo as
Yeah.
well.
Interesting deck. I don't think I've seen anyone like this before.
Punishing Maverick is not particularly common. Uh, so you're not out of this yet. I think it's time to tick up the vial. And the game plan needs to be draw Batter Skull. That's super punishing. Do we have any 4-drops in this deck?
There's no 4-drops, no
Okay, so
jailer.
no jailer. Okay.
I personally like playing a jailer in the deck, but I was just kind of ripping something off the internet.
Yeah, I mean, cast your recruiter, and we'll see what we can get here. The recruiter itself is immediately going to die, but we're trying to play towards putting a Batter Skull on a Yorion and killing our opponent in one hit anyway. Excuse me. All right. So you've got options. You can get Cathar Commando that answers the Jitte. You can get a Solitude that answers the Knight. You can get a Sanctum Prelate that answers the Punishing Fire combo.
Yeah, I think the Cathar Commando sounds best to me because
So it's a question of like, do you want the guaranteed answer to Jitte? The answer here is probably yes. Like
I think so.
your opponent is playing in a way that's kind of like minimizing what their Jitte is doing, but if they get that online, it's very bad. So the other thing here is that like the Yorion might not be the best possible finisher here because opponent might have access to Caracas off of Knight of the Reliquary. And if that's the case, it's quite awkward. And the presence of the Jitte in play means that some of the like lines where you get a Solitude, draw a land, play a Solitude, Yorion, blink Solitude, get another thing, aren't necessarily going to work. The Punishing Fire also makes it really hard to actually successfully blink anything. Yep.
Yeah, because now they can Jitte and Punishing Fire to kill a Yorion too. If we don't get rid of it.
Hmm. No, life's bad.
Yeah.
Your opponent does keep playing these lands pre-combat though, and is like not attacking with Knight of the Reliquary, which I'm honestly pretty thankful for. Oh, there it is.
Hey.
Yeah, so they probably should not have played that pre-combat wasteland. Like I understand wanting to get the Ramunap Excavator value, but it just like decreases the amount of damage that you're doing.
Yeah, part of me just wants to chump this thing here because it's gonna die anyways, but
So if you chump, that's one Jitte counter that your opponent doesn't have to use. So it's just a choice of like, do you want 6 life, or do you want to force your opponent to have to use a Jitte counter to stop you from blinking the recruiter? And since Yorion has
yeah.
5 toughness, like that's a real choice.
Yeah, I mean, so they're gonna it's really because they're gonna go to or they go to 10, right?
You can
I think I'd rather block.
yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Especially if you plan on doing like Cathar Commando, just kind of like before this Yorion would come into play at all.
Yeah. I would like to make this game last much longer. Don't play a good card. Don't do it.
this is a game where if this goes 2-3 games, one of us is pretty likely to time out. Just kind of like saying that now.
Mm-hmm.
And this is going to be a game where, like, the higher... Oh, geez. That's bad. That probably represents Cauldra. Batter Skull. Okay.
Could have been worse. Hmm.
All right. So
Well,
it's pretty obligatory that you have to kill the opponent's
yeah,
Jete. So you want to do this on your turn. Otherwise, if you wait until their turn, they can use the Jete counters to pump their Remunap Excavator and deal more combat damage to you.
absolutely right. Okay.
So another thing here is if you want to use your Yorion now, you can just put in your Yorion and equip it with a Jete on your own turn. This is not like the value-oriented Yorion that this deck is built around or anything. You can also consider blinking your Ether Vial
I
and
think I like
resetting
that.
it.
Yeah.
Because you only have a couple of Solitudes left in the deck. The thing that makes this maybe not correct is like if your opponent has access to Caracas. Okay, they just have a Source of Plowshares. That's fine.
I kind of feel like we could just concede in the sake of time and sportsmanship because
This game is quickly tilting in favor of your opponent, right? Like your opponent is getting to the point where they can just play like 2 mana, put in Batter Skull, 5 mana, equip to Knight, gain 11-ish life, and just kind of very much prolong this game. So kind of the question here is like, do you want more time for your own turns later, or do you want to try to burn their clock?
I think the clock is usually what I would go for. Maybe we learn a little bit more. I mean, is Stoneforge Mystic usually a card that they like a Maverick deck plays? I don't think.
It used to be more popular than it currently is.
Okay.
So it used to be that Stoneforge was a card that Maverick was like potentially built around, and now it's kind of like Stoneforge is an option in the deck. Yeah, opponent keeps doing these like first main phase, land drops, which they should not be doing.
No.
But we're not really in a situation to do much about that.
No, I do not. I do not think we're going to win that one. Cataclysm, where are you? Okay.
All right. So what do you want here?
They are a Green Sun deck,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yep. And if they're a Stoneforge deck, and if they're a Green Sun deck, and if they're attacking me deck, and if they have permanents, and they have Excavator, but I'm less sold on that.
Okay. What about the Soul Guide Liner? Do you like that one?
Compared to these cards, maybe. I mean, I think I like both of these ones. Thinking about what I could take out.
Okay. So you have 7 cards you could board in. We might not board in all of them. Let's take a look at what you don't want. We already kind of identified that Thalia is a pretty weak card here. So
Yeah,
some or all of those can just go right on out of the deck.
this prelate doesn't feel strong.
Yeah, so it can go on 2 to stop punishing fire. That's the big thing that it does.
Okay. That's it's not nothing. Um, Mother of Runes seems good. Punishing Fire, Vials seem good. All the equipment seems good to me.
Okay. How necessary is this Shadow Spear?
Not super necessary. We're not like our life total's not super under threat.
Okay. So there's 5 as a starting point. So do you feel like you need both Digger's Cage and Soul Guide Lantern, or is like one of those good enough?
One of those is probably good. I'd probably rather have the card actually,
Okay.
not the Soul God Lantern. Or what do you think?
I think playing one of them is fine. I think playing both of them is probably too much. Like
Okay.
the green suns are shut off by Digger's Cage, whereas Soul Guide Lantern is better against punishing fire specifically.
Oh, well, I would rather get rid of. I don't like the green sun, so let's do that. And then
You could always trim one Spirit of the Labyrinth if you're not sure. Like it's good against Sylvan Library, but your opponent is a punishing fire deck at the end of the day.
okay. Yeah, no, I don't think so.
Yeah, you kind of have 4 lands here, but this is a very, very awkward hand. I think shipping that is the correct decision.
Okay. So this is good against the monkey. Are they on 7? What do they do? Begins with 7. So I'm gonna keep it.
Yeah. What are you getting rid of?
Part of me wants to get rid of, I think maybe a wasteland, because I want to be able to access the double white in the later game. But I also really like this Caracas for the sake of dealing with the monkey that might be coming.
Okay. This might seem a little crazy to you. What do you think about throwing back the Ether Vial? So, with this hand, you have your turn 1 play of Mother of Runes already.
Yeah,
You have your turn 2 play already of Timeless Dragon.
sure.
That means if, and this is an if you want to just slam Mother of Runes on 1 and say, like, it's Swords to Plowshares right now, or I play around Punishing Fire, you could just choose to get rid of the Aether Vial and keep a mana-heavy hand, hoping that Yorion or Eternalizing Timeless Dragon gets you somewhere.
Let's try that.
Yep.
I have never done that. I would never think of it. I would like to learn how it goes.
So this is something you kind of learn if you play Goblins. There's times where you're supposed to just like play out the Goblin Lackey when you have the Aether Vial and put your opponent to the test, where it's like answer right now or this hand runs you over. And there's
Yeah.
times where you're supposed to play out the Aether Vial. Yeah.
Okay.
So like now your Mother of Runes is active.
Okay. And I don't, I mean, what do you think about putting the second mother down? It's awkward for them to have to play removal on when they have 3 mana.
So your big question this turn is, am I using Wasteland? That's what you have to ask yourself. Are you going to Wasteland that Savannah and set your opponent back? Because you can Wasteland and play a Mother of Runes and really try to sculpt this defensive position where you can try to Eternalize a Timeless Dragon and beat your opponent to death with it.
You see, and I thought of that, but then I thought, well, now you're behind on mana, right? And is that, but it seems like I have mana, so I could use that, is what you're saying.
So this is a question of like, how are you pathing this game? Like you can path this game very safely where you just like play another planes, don't expose yourself to a wasteland, play another Mother of Runes, or you can be a little more aggressive, try to knock your opponent off balance and go Mom Wasteland here. It's just a question of like, what is the pace of this game? You know, is the mana better for you or them? And right now, when you have double Mother of Runes, soon to be double active Mother of Runes, like, you might be able to just sit back, prolong this game, and like not let your opponent play something cool like a Knight of the Reliquary that really threatens to mess with you.
Okay.
Feels like a Stoneforge. Ooh, it's a library. Yeah.
Okay.
So this Sylvan Library is a little scary without any real way to pressure your opponent's life total, but like Timeless Dragon is the long-term plan for that. And honestly, Timeless Dragon might be a 2-turn clock by the time that any of that stuff happens. Yeah, Jitte is not scary right now. All right, so which land are you playing this turn and why?
I think I want to put a plains so I can play a Saga next turn and do Timeless Dragon.
Sounds good. Yeah, I don't think
I can put this Yorion in hand while we're at it.
I don't think you want to put yourself in a situation where like you can be wastelanded and kept off of playing that Timeless Dragon. So Timeless Dragon rather is now officially a 2-turn clock. Okay. That's annoying. So with the Exalted, that means that this is now a 1-2, and it actually gets to connect in the air. So that is going to mean that these Jitte counters are going to eat both Mother of Runes. Not great.
Thanks for showing up, Solitude.
I mean, it's honestly not that bad. It's a turn late, but it's not that bad.
It is better than not showing up at all.
Yep. Oh, wait, does it eternalize one smaller?
I think it. I'm not sure if it's a standard thing, but Eternalized Kenra is a 4/4. So maybe it's always a 4/4?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it's always a 4/4, maybe.
Sorry, I've mixed up Eternalize with one of the other things that works just like Eternalize does. So you're not creating a token of it. You're just making a 4/4.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think
my bad there.
No, you're good.
All right, so this thing doesn't fly. Is it just a 4/4 zombie?
Oh, it's flying.
Okay.
So I mean, it is that. It's just limited at being a 4/4, I think. So I want to do white first, right?
So the kind of weird thing is you don't want to do white with the first one that is going to resolve here, because
Right. Got our hopes up. What were you saying about that?
all right. So finishing the thought. Geez, we lose the land there too. If you have two Mother of Runes pointed at one target, and the one that resolves gives pro white, then your Mother of Runes activation that's still on the stack would fizzle, right?
Yeah.
Because like you've given it pro white to attempt to stop the Swords to Plowshares.
I'm going to concede this game so we can play more matches.
Okay, that's reasonable. Like you can Solitude a creature away next turn, but this one has kind of slipped away a little bit. So for anyone watching along at home, the thing about the Eternalize is that you exile this card from your graveyard, create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 4/4 black dragon zombie with no mana cost.
Okay.
All right. What do you think of your hand?
I think we have to pitch it.
Sounds good. I just don't think that's worth the risk here.
I like this one, putting back the Shadow Spear.
I would agree with that. Yeah, Shadow Spear is not really a respectable Magic card in most cases. It's something that can go... Ooh, Ancient Tomb. Oh. We are playing against a bit of a brew. We're playing against a food deck of some kind.
Some sort of like Hollow Vine food deck thing. Okay.
The Ancient Tombs would be a little weird doing Olivine sort of shenanigans. I mean, regardless, you're playing Plains and Pass. Like, you don't really have any real agency here. So we should expect, I believe it is Oval Chase Daredevil, the thing that can, like, come back when you create an artifact. Your opponent could do loops with those.
And then we should expect Urza's Saga.
Oh, Crucible, super good. You can, like, discard a land and then replay it. Yeah, our Urza Sagas are good. They might have Urza Sagas as well. All right, so what's your line?
Well, they'd have to discard 2 cards to make 2 food to kill what I play. Getting something in my hand doesn't seem so valuable. I think a Spirit to make them pitch 2 cards and threaten to block this thing. Either they got to pitch 2 cards to kill it, or I stop taking damage for a while.
Okay. Spirit's reasonable if you're planning on blocking Osmore. The other thing you can do is just play out the Stoneforge Mystic and try to force your opponent to discard 2 cards. Like, Stoneforge for Kaldra and say, like, if you don't hemorrhage 2 cards from your hand to get these foods, I am going to murder you.
Yeah. See, my sense of these decks is they don't actually care much about the cards in their hand, typically.
Okay. You just want to play the Spirit and try to trade with it?
Yeah, and this is based on playing Modern, so, but yeah, my sense is that we might, yeah, okay.
All right. So that was their draw for turn. Otherwise, they could have started doing that last turn.
Okay.
That's sort of unfortunate for us. That means every turn they can. Is that the replacement thing? Yeah. So
this is reasonable.
This is a thing.
What card advantage? Virtual card advantage.
I'm not saying we're dead, but we're dead.
Feel very alive.
So, oh, that's incredibly good.
This thing is going to murder us if we don't get rid of it.
That's correct. So is the Osmore, though.
Yeah.
All right, so let's plan it out. What's your line?
This Thalia looks like trash. So eventually, I think I've got to rally around a Stoneforge Mystic, but I don't even know how that looks.
Okay, so I think in the short term, the Osmore has to leave play first, because otherwise you just like cannot stick another card. The Fiddlebender also probably needs to leave play. We don't know all the details of our opponent's deck. Like, there could be a painter package in there. This could just be an artifact value package. But presumably, Oswald Fiddlebender, one way or another, will beat you if it stays in play. So over 2 turns, you could do something like Solitude, pitch Thalia, get Osmore, play a Recruiter of the Guard, get another Solitude, and get Oswald Fiddlebender as well.
And that leaves us with a Stoneforge Mystic.
Yeah, it's hemorrhaging a ton of resources. It doesn't feel good. Like, your opponent still has a clue token and stuff, but you can more or less clear the board if you want.
Alrighty. Let's
Then this is kind of a situation where we hope that the Yorion that is currently chilling in our little command zone is going to be able to get us out of the situation that hemorrhaging these cards puts us in. Our opponent is generating so much more value than us right now.
yeah.
Alternatively, like, we can just Stoneforge for Cauldra and just oops win a game that way. That happens plenty of times too.
That was my only thought. I was like, the only thing I think it can save us here is a Cauldra. The good thing about these decks, they're full of a lot of air. Oh, there's the Saga.
Yeah, so that's I don't know if you've done a quick artifact count on the other side of the battlefield, but a little bit bigger than what we've got going on.
Yeah. Okay. So it doesn't. Yeah. Okay.
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 I think at this point, if you want to concede, you can consider conceding. Like, we can see if we draw like a wasteland or something, but
Yeah.
I don't think a Cauldra is going to beat just the raw amount of value that our opponent has going on there. And if at any point we get another artifact to the graveyard, like, they can weld out our Cauldra, it's pretty bad.
Okie dokie. So we want to be drawing removal in the early game, is what it seems like.
All right, so what do we have here?
We have graveyard, fighting things. Kind of want to play some of these too.
Okay, what are you looking to stop with Deafening Silence exactly?
Oh, not Deafening Silence. I was talking about the surgicals.
Sure.
Those just because I just felt like the Oval Chase, in between Oval Chase and Crucible. Because that Fiddlebender deck is really as a Crucible deck in a lot of ways too, I think. So they're really, and they have the Welder. So we could probably hide behind a Peacekeeper for some number of games as well. Attainment priest. I don't know about that. So
All right.
actively bad cards.
So what are you hoping to do with Grafdigger's Cage?
Does this not work with Goblin Welder? Does this not get around Goblin Welder?
So, uh, so looking at this, it's creature cards in graveyard, right? So if they choose a non-creature card, that doesn't really stop Goblin Welder. So it can stop Goblin Welder from doing some things, but like say there's a Crucible World in the graveyard, they can go and make that swap safely.
Yeah. Yeah, oh, I guess like artifact creature they showed us was that 1/3 that triples the effect or whatever. So um I didn't see them drawing a lot of cards necessarily.
Well, that's partially true, right? They did have the clues.
Yeah, you're right. Never mind.
So you can pull the Shadow Spear and the Prelate. I think those are good thoughts.
Maybe
Your
this is just a little much, or
That might be a little much. You can also trim some number of Thalias. Like a lot of the things your opponent is doing are going to be creature based ultimately. So like your Thalias are only medium.
how do you like this Peacekeeper?
You have 6 seconds. I'd cut it. I'd cut it and click on some other random card and get rid of it, and then submit.
All right.
All right. What do you think of your opening hand?
Slow. Um, yeah, slow, not terrible though.
I agree with your assessment. Are you going to keep it, or are you going to fish for a hand that's more proactive?
I'm kind of inclined to keep it.
Okay, let's see how it plays out. Like I don't think your hand is really taking advantage of your initial couple of turns very well, but
Yeah.
like you can scoop something out of the graveyard, you have an answer to something that hits play, Flicker Wisp can kill a token, and like at worst, you can just play a turn 2 Urza Saga and start making constructs that way and work towards like a Pithing Needle. Maybe not now.
How much for the saga? All right.
Okay, well, there's a play.
Madre.
Not a great play, but a play. Opponent's got a lot of colorless based stuff in this deck. Like Mum still probably has some amount of value, but
Yeah.
not really what you're looking to do.
No. Carnitas.
All right. I mean, this is why Council Judgment is a thing.
Yes, sir.
It kind of sucks though, because like we had a really good turn 3 of Flicker Wisping that Mox Diamond.
Yeah. Stack.
Well,
Who cares about stack? All right. Back to your regularly scheduled programming. And I feel like I just want to attack.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
We don't expect our opponent to have too much removal. Like this Mother of Ruin exists to help like awkwardly stalled boards where your opponent has like a Goblin Welder and a Fiddlebender or something.
Right.
But against like the construct tokens, it doesn't have a lot of text. Neat.
Immediately punished, naturally.
Okay, I don't think we care too much. All right. So, what are you doing with your Cathar Commando?
Um, I mean, if we start getting smokestacked, we're toast, I think.
Okay. So
So I
your
think it's
plan can be to get rid of the smokestack. That's fine. Like,
yeah, and then we flicker wisp everything else that comes out of that saga. And like part of me doesn't even want to play this saga yet while they have this wasteland, but
so their wasteland is trading for one of your lands at some point. Um, I don't know that you're going to be able to stay in this situation where you get to use the saga the way that you want it to.
okay. Well, let's just
All right. It's gone. Your next turn here is potentially going to be a little bit awkward because you don't really want to play out a Flicker Wisp until like these Urza sagas have started going away. JK.
I'll take that value. Thank you.
Yeah. So now your opponent will like be forced to activate that, and then you can Flicker Wisp a token away and end up in a pretty good spot, honestly.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, they could play another Karn with that Mox Diamond potentially, but what do you think?
I mean, a 3/3 that is potentially going to get bigger is potentially more of an issue. You don't know whether or not they have a land in hand right now. Like, you know that they made their land drop, you know that they cycled another land.
Okay.
Like, if they play a Karn on a board that's not if they play a Karn on a board that already has creatures there, it's less threatening for you. Yeah, so they would have just immediately kept the Mox Diamond.
Okay. Hmm.
All right, what's your line for this turn?
So exactly. So I can get a 1 mana or a 2 mana artifact. So I could pull a Torpor Orb into play right now.
Start thinking with portals. Start thinking what you can do with multiple Flicker Wisps.
Well, I can blink this dude out and he basically gets time walked out of existence, right?
Yeah, so
That's kind of the
you can attack with your Flicker Wisp. You can then Flicker Wisp your Flicker Wisp. Have your Flicker Wisp come back. And then Flicker Wisp the Oswald Fiddlebender.
yeah.
And that keeps that activation from happening for a turn cycle. At which point your opponent will be close to dead. So we're also just trying to avoid something random like an ensnaring bridge just beating us. I don't know to what extent we're going to have to worry about something like that.
All right.
So some strange things might end up happening here.
Yes, definitely.
And don't forget to put your Yorion in hand.
Uh-huh. All right.
The opponent can get a 1 or technically a 2-drop. Yeah, well, I guess they have multiple different 1-drops they could get rid of. They can't get a
Yeah.
3 immediately, which is kind of spooky. Alright, opponent is going for life here. So now they're not really dead on board because they can just discard a card and then go above 6.
Love a Skyclave apparition.
I mean, we have a ton of good draws. We also have enough power in play that our opponent does have to sweat it a little bit. I don't know exactly what their tutor target package is going to look like.
Yeah, I don't know. This is the first time playing against this for me.
No, this one seems like at least a little bit of a brew. Excuse me?
Sweet.
Uh, okay. Is it 5 artifacts for an extra turn? Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah. I guess something with CMC 2.
Big
All right.
commit.
Sure. So they could sacrifice. Oh,
And
okay. That's it. Here I was worried about like somehow losing to turns.
yeah. Okay, so we think we keep it the same then,
I, I
or
I think you're gonna end up keeping it roughly the same.
yeah, I think so.
Like you were unsure about the number of surgical extractions. Having a couple seems fine. Like the graveyard hate does stuff, but it's not winning games on its own. So I think what you've done is okay. We were a little rushed last time around, but I don't think you're so far off.
Okay.
That
Into
that
bed
feels
and
uh
wrath.
that feels mana light to me.
Yeah.
I
So this
agree,
takes
but
Oswald out of play.
mhm.
This handles their graveyard. This is wasteland proof.
I think you're keeping your hand. Like you're throwing back one of those surgical extractions. Like you don't love seeing the surgical extraction on a hand that's weak. Like you don't really want to see the surgical extraction unless your opponent like has the oval chase daredevil combo or you're like disrupting a very critical goblin welder turn.
Right.
That's a rough draw too.
Yeah.
All right. So, oh,
Yeah.
that's quite lucky.
Thank you.
feels like it's probably gonna end up being Oswald. There's only so many 2 drops the opponent has.
Right. There he is.
Yep. Yeah, I very much do not like the idea of Ichor Wellspring turning into Crucible of Worlds. That's painful.
Yeah, no thank you. No thank you. Now, if they have a wasteland, I have to go after that Urza Saga in the yard with a surgical, but they don't yet. Okay.
Okay. So at the end of the day, these are both legendary creatures.
Caracas too strong.
Caracas is currently on Fiddlebender duty though, pretty heavily.
Yeah. So we get. Yeah, I don't want to play this Stoneforge yet. We play this Jitte though, huh?
Sure. Yeah, something is going to have to trade with some food tokens at some point, but Stoneforge is pretty good right now. With multiple Underworld cookbooks, we also might end up in an awkward situation where our opponent can avoid a surgical on an Oval Chase Daredevil.
Yeah, it's a pretty good draw. Um,
What's your plan?
Kill him, bounce and kill him. I'm trying to think which one I should Council's Judgment though. Probably want to Council's Judgment that Asmo.
Okay, that sounds fine to me. Like the Oswald is currently handled. The Oswald takes up 2 mana every time. I think it's reasonable to get rid of Osmore. Like with the Osmore leaving play, you can try to get a Cauldra going, which will finish your opponent pretty quickly, especially if they end up having to tap that Ancient Tomb to make multiple plays in the same turn. Yeah, that's not bad.
Any thought to playing the Mother first to protect the Mystic for a turn?
So have we seen any spot removal yet?
No, I don't think so.
So
But
we've seen one portable hole.
right, yeah, yeah. Which we can get rid of with Cathar Commando in a kind of beneficial way.
Yeah. Like you can try to play this like super conservatively you want, or you can just like throw Mom and Stoneforge into play and say like, okay, if you have portable hole, you can get rid of one of these, and it's not that big of a deal if you hit either one. Because like if you hit Stoneforge, so my creatures or my equipment doesn't hit play, I can eventually hardcast them, or I can like blow up portable hole and get my value that way.
Yeah.
I'm a little unsure what our opponent has in hand. Like I was kind of thinking there might be duplicate Oswald Fiddlebenders. Because like opponents had a couple of turns where they've just passed the turn with stuff in hand.
Okay. So that's the thing. That's how they get them online.
Okay, yeah, so there's the duplicate Oswald Fiddlebender that I thought might be here.
Yeah.
Now they get their extra turn, and they finally get their Oswald online. Okay, see what they can do with that.
So when they activate it, are we going to want a surgical that Saga because they're probably yeah. I mean, they can go get what's it called now, the Crucible.
Crucible.
Yeah.
So you just want to attempt to eliminate all of the sagas?
I think that would be because I just don't know what else they're recurring. We've got if they drop a bridge, we can Cathar it.
Sure. Go ahead and surgical the Urza Saga. I'm not comfortable enough with what they're doing with the time sieve to know whether or not there's something else that's going to combo with it easily.
Yeah, sure.
Like there's the food doubler guy. But if this
Ha.
Oh wow, that is
Gore.
sick value.
All right, what else we got here? We got Academy. That's the main. That's the triple guy.
Is it triple or double?
If you create a clue, food, or treasure, create one of each.
Okay, yeah, so kind of triple. All right, got it.
Gear per Aether Grid is someone to watch out for. Yeah.
Okay.
And then one Pithing Needle, one Crucible. So they're getting either the triplicate guy or they're getting a Crucible.
Sure, and it's probably the triplicate thing.
Yeah. Since they're kind of trying to take all the turns now, it seems. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a weird situation.
Yeah.
All right. So what is your plan? You have a handful of options available to you here.
Well, to avoid the Oswald Fiddlebender getting online again thing, I would probably just like to Cathar Commando this time sieve.
Okay.
And bounce Oswald.
Okay.
And
So if you're going to do the whole Cathar Commando thing, you probably do that first and see if it prompts your opponent into sacrificing their 5 artifacts for an additional turn.
yeah.
Yeah, so now you can bounce that. Play your port, and unfortunately your turn's over. You don't get to throw the Cauldron this turn as was expected. But now, outside of some sort of Goblin Welder shenanigans, you have like the Time Sieve stuff covered.
Yeah.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Well, it turns out we got that done in time, though. That would have been no more games for us.
Yeah, opponent's going to have a pretty decent ability to grind here. Yeah, and that's another Underworld cookbook, so they can start doing that stuff twice a turn. This is pretty cool.
Yeah. Almost F6 though.
Our stuff is safe because of mom. All right. So, what's your plan?
Put a cauldron down and put a jitte on it.
Okay. Sounds good.
Bye bye, Mr. Fiddlesticks.
Okay. And now that puts you in the situation where you can start bouncing the Asmore instead.
Yep. Any reason not to do this now? No, we don't do it now.
Yeah, the Asmore can do some damage to your little creatures. But I don't know how easy it's going to be for the opponent to actually stop this Cauldra. Like with Oswald Fiddlebender not like being the tutor engine anymore. I think opponent's in a tricky spot. I don't want to count them out yet though, because they have an insane ability to grind.
Yeah. I sworn I yielded to that.
I think that's one of the annoying cards that it's hard to yield to, because like every time it enters the graveyard, it's a new game object.
Okay.
Okay, no, I'm wrong. There's some of those cards where like they move zones and they don't move zones well. So your opponent has 2 cookbooks in the graveyard already, so they don't actually have another to find, which is what makes like actually bouncing the Osmore fine. Okay, so you can just protect from that and make them use some more foods. Yeah, not that big of a deal. So it gets fun for us if we draw another land. Hey, we did it. You see the line?
Yeah, we just put a batter skull on that thing.
Yep. All right. You have quite the death machine now.
Yes. And it feels good. And it feels good.
All right. Is that the end of this match, or do we have another game here?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that is the match. Hey, if you made it this far in the video, it's pretty obvious that you're enjoying my content. Consider doing something to help me, whether it's something as small as leaving a like or subscribing to my channel, or doing something cool like doing a donation deck list, or even cooler, a dealer's choice donation deck list. Just saying, I get to do shenanigans every time that happens. Okay, back to the show. All right, Sorry, are we play or draw here?
We're on the play.
All right, what do you think of your hand?
It's very risky.
It is very risky. So, if it works out, you have Mother of Runes probably into Spirit of the Labyrinth off the vial. Your Stoneforge loses a little bit of oomph because you don't actually have the white mana to activate it. So Force of Will and Prismatic Ending are going to ruin this hand. And honestly, the hand's not great if you don't draw another white source either.
We can mulligan, I think. Okay. Putting back the Cathar, putting back the Jitte or the Cathar Commando?
I think those are your two options for what to put back. Like, you don't have the mana to sink into the Jitte currently, which makes it not appealing right now. Cathar Commando is the sort of card where, like, it can potentially just, like, Mise a matchup win by blowing up an Urza Saga or something. I mean, not that Jitte can't, but you're pretty far away from being able to dump 4 mana into a Jitte profitably right now.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
At the end of the day, Cathar Commando is also just like a stupid 3-1, right? And if you have two stupid 3-1s, that's a decent amount of power if your opponent doesn't have blockers.
Yeah. Okay. Go.
Okay, so you're facing down Island. What, if anything, is your play right now?
I'm more inclined to just flash in Spirit of the Labyrinth with the vial, but
Okay.
yeah.
So then you can just pass the turn with the ability to cast Cathar Commando or Swords to Plowshares.
Show and tell, maybe?
It's sort of interesting that they played that land prior to a preordain. But yeah, we definitely should be thinking something on the combo axis here.
I'm not going to play a Cathar Commando into Daze if I think my opponent's playing Omniscience, potentially.
Okay. Yeah, it's also the sort of thing where like you have some value just keeping that card in your hand so that you can like just put it in off a show and tell if that's what your opponent's doing. You potentially lose out on 3 damage by not playing it the previous turn cycle, but I don't think it's crazy to not play that card there.
Yeah. So I think I'd do this on my turn with the Spirit.
Okay, how come?
Well, upkeep Brainstorm, potentially. Basically the same as an end of turn Brainstorm for all that intents and purposes, though.
If your opponent has a Brainstorm and they're scared of Spirit of the Labyrinth, like in response to a Vial on 2, either because of Thalia or because of Spirit of the Labyrinth, they just play that Brainstorm. Whereas if they try to do it end of turn, like you can Vial in the Spirit and try to get them there. You also just like straight up could just cast a Flicker Wisp and flicker one of your own planes. And that puts pressure in play while allowing you to leave up 1 mana for activating a Cathar Commando if your opponent casts a Show and Tell.
Sold, sir.
And like you don't really care if a Flicker Wisp gets dazed. Like that's a 3-1 with minimal other text. And notably though, since you do have Swords to Plowshares, you did want to flicker a planes there. Because now
Yes,
you're
I will.
representing, 1 fewer spell. It is High Tide again.
Again. Should have played that Cathar Commando out.
Yep. I mean, now you know, though. You also just do have an absolutely insane clock. So one thing you can consider here, and you don't have to do it, you can consider tapping this Ether Vial to put in your Cathar Commando right now, and then ticking the vial up to 3 so that you can work towards being able to put in a Yorion.
Yeah.
It's a little punishing if you draw exactly a Recruiter of the Guard, because then you lose out on some lines, but otherwise this leaves you open to some other kind of nice things in the future.
Just cast that.
Yeah, Cathar Commando can attack. Yeah, and you can just cast the Skyclave as a 2/2. You expect your opponent to be playing no permanents. Candelabra isn't really popular anymore. So with Spirit of the Labyrinth in play, it's very difficult for your opponent to combo off. Like, they probably have to Cunning Wish for an answer to Spirit of the Labyrinth, and then try to go off.
Yeah, let's draw Thalia. Seal the deal.
Uh, I guess opponent could have like multiple high tides in a turnabout right now, and then like potentially could go off through it. It would be difficult. Okay, so it's high tide, high tide. This will be a turnabout. Okay, it's a Cunning Wish. Oh, do they have a snap in the sideboard?
I saw that from the last person who did it. Yeah, they Cunning Wish for a snap, but they never played it. Well, the last time we played yesterday.
Okay, there is a snap. So now they can attempt like either a turnabout or a draw 7 or something. This is going to be one of those times where anything that happens this turn is completely out of our control.
Okay. Well, at least I'll get to see it.
Yeah, because you said you haven't really played against High Tide much at all, right?
No, that we played yesterday, and that was the first time I'd seen it.
Yeah.
Fat load of good metal demon.
So they now get to untap their lands. They have 5 lands. Each is tapping for 3. That's a minimum of 21 mana, but they shuffle those High Tides back into their deck so they can draw them again. And then, like, now each one of those islands they have untapped taps for 4, and they're going to try to get to a relatively high mana amount and then deck us somehow. Either by forcing us to draw our entire library via Blue Sun, or by brain freezing us and milling us. It's a tiny bit harder technically with a larger deck, but like as you can see, the storm count is going up very, very, very quickly.
Yeah.
The thing that's a little annoying about High Tide is the combo is not deterministic, and like fizzling is something that like very realistically can happen if you end up drawing too many lands, or you don't end up finding an untapper or something. So you just have to kind of chill for a little while, sort of like with like modern eggs, where it's like, well, all right, am I dead? Maybe.
It's nice to have a little bit of hope in the
Yes,
equation.
kind of.
Yeah.
And then other times you're just like, yeah, can you just like Emrakul me or something and move on?
Right. It's all depend on the day. Yeah, that looks like all.
So this is probably the point where we're
30,
dead.
51, 66 cards in my library.
Yeah. So they're at milling around 60 already. So They don't have to do much more to just outright kill us. They have that mills for 51, or no, it adds one. So that mills for 54 of our 66 already. Yeah, I assume we're just dead to that.
Let's see what they get. Intuition.
Honestly, it can just be something stupid like a cantrip. Like, just get them another ponder, build the storm count, find another thing to cast. Yeah, if you're bored, just concede. Like, we're going to be dead here, I think. I'm not too worried about the opponent getting the last couple of storm to finish things off.
Looks like they had that in spades. Okay. So, any consideration to graveyard stuff to deal with the reshuffling of High Tide?
The graveyard hate is the sort of thing where if you have a bunch of weak cards, you can bring it in, but it's not innately good.
Yeah.
Like, stopping your opponent from having 7 High Tides is cool and all, but cards like Deafening Silence and Aethersworn Canonist are going to have a much higher impact on the game. So, like, of the graveyard hate that you do have, the Surgical Extractions are probably the best. Because, like, they can just rip. You're probably going to keep in some number of Solitudes, too, by the way. Because you have Swords to Plowshares to remove, which has 0 targets in game 1, and usually 0 targets in post-sideboard games as well. Because so much of your opponent's sideboard is a Wish package. So at this point, you can remove, like, a Solitude or a Skyclave or something. Neither one of those cards is particularly good. And honestly, the Retrofitter Foundry might be better than just like a random Skyclave or something. Like the Skyclaves and Solitudes are quite bad.
What is it? It's not Hill Giant. What is it? 3 mana 2/2. What is it? Vanilla card.
Yeah, I'm not great at that sort of thing.
Let's see. Thalia and Canonist. I'm feeling positive about this.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's the sort of thing where a single snap type effect doesn't just wreck the hand. Yeah, like the Solitude is kind of a dead card, but like we didn't super have the opportunity to board all of those out well. Like Solitudes and Skyclaves are both really bad. But like having Thalia and Aethersworn and then a Recruiter of the Guard to back those things up is pretty good. Again, versus High Tide, you don't need to stop them fast like you do with something like TES. You just need to stop them.
You said like turn 4, turn 3 kind of thing.
Yeah, turn 3 is possible, but quite unlikely. Turn 4 is common. Turn 5 is usually pretty easy. Because in order to go off on fewer cards, you really need more copies of High Tide quickly. So to just like put it in perspective, let's say you have 4 lands. You can play a High Tide and then have 6 mana afterwards, which immediately lets you do something like a Time Spiral. Whereas if you play a High Tide followed by, like, if you're on 3 lands and you just play a High Tide, you only have 4 mana afterwards. You need to start looking at something like a second High Tide into a turnabout immediately to get to that same 6 mana. So more steps are required to go off more quickly. And then later on, it often becomes a joke.
I think I like the Thalia.
Yep. Thalia slows down cantrips, which is what you care about right now. Like, Thalia essentially makes it so your opponent gets one card, period. Whereas if you play a Canonist, your opponent could do something like Preordain on their turn into Brainstorm on your turn.
Okey-doke. Any thought to playing Recruiter this turn for like Prelate? We can't cast Prelate
Yeah,
though.
you can't cast that right now. Yeah, just get your Aethersworn Canonist in there. Like, in addition to just being like a hate card in the matchup, it's also 2 power. Like, we do want to close this game because as we saw like last time when our opponent like snapped our hate bear and then won, like we do need to get the show on the road. If both of these resolve, you also can start to like build worlds where you don't cast any other things for the rest of the game and you just double Rashad and port your opponent
Yeah,
into absolute oblivion.
I am partial to that. Part of why I like this deck is because I love Port so much, because one of the first sort of like tournaments that I did, it was like a PTQ back when I must have been like 14 or something like that, 15, maybe even younger. And it was masks, Mercadian masks with rising waters. So it's basically stasis with Port
Oh,
and
nice.
Port and Days, like in the original standard. And I love doing that to people. They don't play stasis in Legacy really anymore, do they?
It's real hard to. I've gotten
Yeah.
paid to try a couple of times. The videos don't go well, but they're entertaining when it does work.
Okay.
It's just so hard to like want to do a hard prison strategy like that when there's such powerful like Modern Horizons 2 cards around.
Right.
Like, oh, I'm going to build this 3-card prison combo. Heh, Ragavan goes brrr.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like the threats are also just like both the threats and answers are better than they used to be. Prismatic ending, answers, enchantments that used to be just like super sticky. All right, so are you going to Recruiter for anything, or is your plan just keep the mana tap down?
I feel like I would Recruiter next turn, but for this turn, so I could Port and Recruiter.
Sure, sounds good. It gets especially good if you like draw a white source, because then you can do something like play a Recruiter, immediately play a Spirit of the Labyrinth or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and that's perfectly safe to do if your opponent ends up tapped out because of Thalia. But they probably like end up playing an island this turn and then just have 1 mana kind of floating in limbo. Ooh, what is this gonna be? Oh, just straight up fetching. Sure. Yep, that is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so now you can just like, well, I guess you don't have double white.
Nope. Nope.
But kind of the next question here is like, do you want to play the Recruiter of the Guard to threaten a different hate bear, or do you just want to keep double porting?
2 turns or
Your opponent is on a
84.
3-turn clock by 1 damage currently.
Right.
So like
So
the extra 1 point, it definitely matters.
I'm inclined to try to shorten that clock down by 1 turn.
Yeah, if you had 1 hate bear in play, I think this would feel pretty risky. With 2 hate bears in play, it's relatively safe. Costs 2 lands to high tide right now if opponent is going to do that. Oh, it is just a brainstorm. That does not feel good for them. I am unsure what exactly opponent's outs are going to be. I know that we would like to draw a land, though, so that we can both play Spirit of the Labyrinth and double port.
That would be wonderful.
It becomes a little weird as to like whether or not it's correct to play the Spirit of the Labyrinth if we miss the land drop. Because opponent will still be on a 2-turn clock. Then it's a question of like, what if they have Force of Will?
Yeah, I don't know what the sideboard of these decks looks like. I would think they'd bring in some 1 or 2 mana
Well,
bounce effects.
there's probably some in the deck and some in the sideboard.
Yeah.
So regardless, you take your attack for 5. Like, that's always happening. All right. So are you going to play the Spirit?
I mean, so if they bounce one of these, they're gonna live.
That is correct.
I think we should play this thing.
Sounds good. So the other thing, thinking about it from a slightly different axis, is that if your opponent has 1 bounce spell and they bounce the Aethersworn Canonist, they can power through Athalia. Like, that's a card that High Tide can ignore. Whereas Spirit of the Labyrinth and Canonist are cards that they can't really ignore.
Okay. That is good to know. Yeah, there's
Oh, that's pretty darn good.
that will probably do it.
So this will give your opponent a chance to go off. Now, you have this Rashaten port.
Yeah.
You probably do not want to activate it in the upkeep, because if your opponent has a high tide, they just cast that. You probably want to activate the port in response to a high tide.
Makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, so this has the effect of like actually denying a mana rather than like opponent just using it to cast the high tide that they would have done anyway. So they still get a mana out of their land, but they don't get 2. Okay, they have 2 high tides already. I expect to lose this one. Stuff can
Yeah.
happen, they can fizzle, but like all our creatures have lost their text. I haven't played a lot of this matchup since Dress Down was printed, but it's rough.
Yeah, Dress Down. I really like it as a card. I really like it as a card.
Yeah. I mean, we went from having 2.5 answers in play to having 0 with one card that also cantripped.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of situations where Dress Down is just atrocious and awful, and then there's situations like this one where it just did like exactly what you needed it to do.
Yeah. I hate having to play around it with like those 4-color control decks, sort of like the Miracles-esque like decks. Man, I think I'm getting ahead with my Urza Sagas, and they drop one of these on me, and I'm just like, oh man.
Yep, Dress Down's a beating, Torpor Orb's a beating too. So this could be an untapper. I guess this could also be like a draw 7. No, opponent's on 4 mana. Yeah, this pretty much has to be an untapper. Unless they already have one in hand. Yep. Yeah, so they've got 18 mana available here.
Only 4 cards in hand though.
Yep. It only takes one card to do a draw 7 though. That's kind of the issue here. Like if they get to a draw 7, we probably don't win from that situation. It's the situations where they spin their wheels and like miss on finding a payoff card that like we can realistically win.
That looks like Time Spiral.
That does look like Time Spiral. Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
And we don't have anything like Mindbreak Trap in this build, so we're not really drawing towards anything that matters.
Here's to a terrible draw 7.
It happens sometimes.
Does not shuffle. Okay.
Good enough for you.
Yeah, that'll
Yeah,
do it for me.
that's fine.